Howdy folks. So product review and teardown time again. And this time we have another kitchen appliance. This is a NutriChef model PKM FR10. This thing is basically a knockoff of a product that Nespresso makes. And it's basically designed for like cappuccinos and hot chocolate and stuff. The idea is you put your milk and stuff in it, and you put in a little either a paddle or like a milk frother attachment onto this. There's just a motor in here, and it basically heats the milk, and then froths it around, spins it around, and then you can pour it out. The Nespresso models, my parents own one. They got it right when it came out as a new product several years ago, and it was ridiculously expensive. And this thing is, like I said, it's a cheap Chinese knockoff. This thing's about $40. So I kind of, I don't drink coffee myself, but I really enjoy hot chocolate in the wintertime. And this is just such a convenient way to make it. I mean, you just sort of put milk in here, put the mix in, push the button, and then less than 2 minutes later, it's the perfect temperature for drinking right away, perfectly mixed, and it's really easy to clean. So I thought I might as well just, for $40, I'll just pick one of these up and see how it compares with the actual real unit. Unfortunately, I don't have the real unit to compare it with, but just to see how it compares, at least, I can describe it. And of course, tear it apart, because I want to see how these things are built inside. And of course, how safe they are, because of course this is a mains powered appliance, which gets wet, as you can see by the watermarks on the stainless steel. I unfortunately can't really get those out. I have really hard water where I am. So anyway, this thing, it comes with, obviously you get the unit itself, the lid. It comes with basically a frothing paddle and a frothing paddle and sort of just a stirring paddle. Now, the one thing I noticed is the Nespresso model, the actual I'm going to call it the original, is magnetic. So the idea is there's just a metal post, and there's no seal at all. It's just a magnetic. There's obviously a magnet in each of these, which just sort of like levitates on that metal post. And the idea is that, of course, there's no seal. There's nothing that can fail. And this, of course, there's none of that magnet business. That's far too expensive. So there is actually a shaft in here, and this just sort of it just sort of pressure fits on there. There's kind of like a little indentation where they obviously intend for it to kind of sit, but it's so weak that I feel like after you take this on and off so many times for cleaning it, that'll wear down, and then it'll kind of just sit on there. It won't really be held on by anything. So long-term reliability about that, I'm not quite sure. Also, I'm not quite sure how reliable the seal is going to be, but we're going to find out how it's sealed when I take this apart. I don't drink cappuccino, so I've never really used the frothing attachment. The idea behind the lid is that there's these little posts, and you can sort of store the other attachment here by sort of poking it in there, and then you can, package it up. But of course, you have to take this out when you actually use it. Otherwise, this is all going to get just fell on the floor. Wonderful. It's going to get all milky and stuff. So I generally just don't even bother. The lid's just clear. It's got a little tiny, semicircle cut out of it. So I guess you could pour it from that, but there isn't really a spout. It's barely there. And plus the seal makes it so that you can't really do that. I just take the lid off to pour stuff out. The seal's pretty decent. It's very, very tight on there. You can hear it. So definitely a good seal. So I don't expect that to give you any problems. I mean, if you don't overfill it, it doesn't even come close to the top anyway, so you shouldn't have an issue with that. Handle is just sort of regular plastic with a little accent there. The front, you've basically just got two LEDs. There's a blue LED on the top and a red LED on the bottom. The idea is you push the button in, both LEDs come on, it starts spinning and it starts warming. This is I think it's a 500 watt heater in it, and it has a temperature sensor in here, and once the quantity of milk that you put in here, or water, I guess you could use water as well, once that gets up to a certain preset temperature, the LED starts flashing, and it's done basically. But it keeps the motor spinning, and it will keep the motor spinning until you unplug it, which is something that the original Nespresso model doesn't do, which is kind of nice because if you leave it for a bit, you know, if you have like, let's say powdered hot chocolate milk, it doesn't start to separate out again, which is kind of nice. And of course, if you hold it, it'll just do just stirring, no heating, which of course is not useful for me, but obviously for its intended purpose, a lot of people would use that. So the actual LED covers are actually squishy. They're actually made of rubber. They're not a hard plastic, which is kind of interesting. One of the things I really want to see is how they seal everything, because this isn't designed to be immersed in water, but of course it's designed to be hand washed. And the base, of course, has exposed electrical connections. So I kind of want to see how well this is sealed, just to see how careful I need to be when cleaning it. So of course this thing has to plug in somehow, and to do that they just use this dock, and the idea is it sits on the dock, and there's just two metal pins in there, one in each ring. So the idea is, of course, you can rotate it any which way you want. Both this and the base are incredibly light. I'd say they weigh like half of what the original unit weighs. It's the feeling of quality is not. It's absent. It's almost completely absent with this product. But at the end of the day, I mean, it does the business, but it doesn't feel very good. Plus, I don't really like how exposed this is. I mean, it's perfectly safe. I mean, the only way you can get to those is if you really jam something in there. But the original has a cover that actually physically comes up, so that you actually have to press the cover down. It's kind of like the UK outlet like plugs. You have to press down for the shutter to open, and then you can get it in. Whereas this is just exposed, so you could accidentally drop something in there and get it live to mains. But it's okay. It's okay for my use anyway. So yeah, so it just says high power heating element, 500 watts, which is not really that high power really. 120 volts. It's not a very well cut sticker. I'm not going to bother to open this because there's nothing interesting inside. 18 gauge wire. Electrical shock hazard. Did they spell everything right on that? Yeah, they did. Okay, that's good. So, I really want to take this apart though. So, yeah, it's got exactly the same sticker on the bottom there, so nothing kind of interesting there. So I think it's just 3 Phillips screws. Well, it doesn't appear that the screws really want to come out. They look to be machine thread, but I'm not quite sure what they're going into. And these other two definitely don't want to fall out. I don't think there's anything behind the sticker. I can't feel anything. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get this open. Okay, so it appears that it's not really glued, but it's kind of really pressed in there. So, okay. I see some goodies in here. It's actually more in here than I expected, so that's interesting. So we've got our oh look, they're on spade terminals. How lovely! I can actually remove things. So let's hope I can remember which goes where. Are these the locking type spade terminals? They look like it. It would be nice if they were. Not really, actually. Okay. And I see an earth, which is nice. They've actually earthed it. That's not going to come off, is it? No, that's not going to come off. Well, I'll take it off at the other end. Okay, good enough. Okay, so our base has a ground, actually. I was kind of half expecting that that ground to only go to the base and not actually go into the unit itself. So that's nice to see. So the screws actually did go into they were properly machined screws. They do actually go into metal fittings on the inside of the actual case. So that's good. They're not. Are they locking? They actually do appear to be locking spade terminals, and one of them just didn't lock. So that's okay. So looking down here, obviously we've got our electronics in this plastic box. We've got our little tiny dinky hobby motor, so I was kind of half expecting it to be one of those. And then we've got what appears to be our power supply for the heating elements. And I can see that there's a horseshoe-shaped heating element, or just a, not really horseshoe, but circular. Yeah, it's a horseshoe shape. Close enough. Okay, so how did they assemble this? I do kind of want to keep this in working order, considering the fact that I just bought it. So, and it's a very odd package design. So it appears that they've got a plastic, this black plastic clip here, which I believe holds this board on, is bolted to the heating element plate with 3 screws that go around the motor. So if I take those screws out, I should be able to get this power supply out, because that's kind of what I want to see, because that's sort of important for safety purposes. Oh, now that's interesting. So by pulling that out, it actually removes the actual shaft itself. So I can actually, from the other side, I can actually move the motor. The motor's held in by that bracket as well. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to get this out because of the way that they've done the seal on this side. I really don't want to pooch the seal because that would... Oh no. Okay, so that's just a press fit straight onto the end of the motor shaft. Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting way of sealing it. I'm not sure if I like that or not. I mean, it's simple, but it's kind of dirty. These screws. Okay. So the way that they're doing this is there's just a piece of it's just a piece of silicone. It's just like a gasket, and they've just lubed up the inside of it. It looks a little bit greasy, and they just kind of shoved that over the end of the motor, and then when this assembly is bolted up to the bottom plate, the hole just kind of squeezes this down. So they're relying on, wow, you know, that goo actually might be milk. It may actually not be grease. I mean, there definitely is grease, but that may also be milk with grease, meaning that it's already gotten this far. Because, I mean, this shaft spins, so, yeah, that's, I don't know what the reliability of that's going to be. I mean, that was one of the nice things about the Nespresso unit, was it was magnetic, so there was no seals. This is probably going to fail at some point. How long, I don't know. But when it does fail, it's going to fill up the motor, so the motor may end up corroding inside before it completely fails. And this is just a 9-volt 2750 RPM by SZJSM motor. They have a website. Okay. And then we've got our power supply module. I'm not taking this all apart because I do kind of want to just remove as few connections as possible. But it looks like a pretty standard power supply. We've got our mains comes in. We've got we actually have a MOV here. Is that a MOV or is that a cap? It's difficult to tell. No, that's just no, that is a MOV. That is a MOV. Okay, cool. I was just wondering. So yeah, so we do have transient protection. We've got a suppression capacitor, and our bridge rectifier is on the other side, which is an actual bridge rectifier package, no discrete diodes. And then we've got some filter caps, which are 4.7 microfarads at 400 volts, and they have 2 of them, and they are wired. How are they wiring this? This cap is across the output. What's the other cap rated for? The other cap is identical, 400 volts, 4.7 mic, but it is not across that. Oh, it's across. Okay, so it goes through this resistor. So they're just using it. They're just sort of filtering it there. And then I'm never going to get this back together again. There is just a power supply controller chip on the back, and we've just got a transformer. We've got a Y cap, another AC line cap, 250 volts. And yeah, I mean, we've just got a transistor for, would that be for output regulation, or would that be for driving the transformer? No, they've actually got two ICs. They've actually got 2 power supply controller ICs, one here and one under the motor. Solder quality isn't great, but it looks like it was probably wave soldered, which is the SMD components. Yeah, you can see glue under it, so it was definitely wave soldered with SMD components. That's why it's kind of nasty looking. Like that right there, that joint right there looks really nasty. So not the greatest solder quality, but I mean, the board has anti-tracking slots in it. It's got one under the cap there. The isolation looks pretty good. Yeah, it's actually quite good underneath the motor. Yeah. The isolation is very good on that. I don't have a problem with that. And then we've just got M1, which would be our motor output, RT1, which would be our thermocouple, and then they've got just CON1, which is just the button and LEDs, and OUT1, which would go to the heater itself. And so they're just switching. What are they switching? They're switching the neutral, so they're not switching the. So this is live, which just comes straight in, and they're switching the neutral side, which is not really that great. It's yeah, I don't really like that, because I mean, if you left this plugged in, like on its base, and you had it filled with water and it just seeped into it, you know, as that seal fails, just seeps in here, and this gets wet, it's all live. I mean, yes, they have grounded it, and I'll get to the ground, but I don't like that. I would have liked them to switch the live, but what can you do? It was $40. So we've got the thermocouple here, which is in a plastic mount, and there's actually a spring which keeps it pushed up against the bottom, which is kind of a neat thing. I guess it gives you pretty accurate thermal measurements, which is nice. And the actual heating element itself, it's kind of crusty, but you can tell it's just a high gauge wire and some ceramic tubing that's encased in that metal casting. They just sort of cast it all as one piece. And I can't tell if they actually cast this whole thing as one piece, or if this heating element is one piece and then they sort of fuse it onto the actual inside, because the inside of this is coated in anti-stick material and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm not quite sure of the manufacturing process for that. I'm don't really know my metal techniques, so I don't know how they would have done that. The earthing wire, it goes to one end of the bracket that holds the thermocouple in. So it's just a lug that they've just screwed it down with. It's okay, but it would have been nicer if they'd screwed it onto something on the outside itself. But it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I've seen far worse grounding than that. And then this panel on the side, if I can get this out, because this looks like it's just clipped in with some very odd looking clips. That's kind of odd. It's got these little plastic wings, and those little wings are right behind the actual tabs of the clip. I wonder why those are there. Is it to prevent the cables from moving around and unhooking this? I don't quite know. I don't think I've ever seen they're almost like little protectors. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So that just comes out like so. So there is how they've done the button. So it is just okay. So it's just a flexible piece of silicone, and that's what the rubbery feeling I was getting from those sort of light windows. And then they've just got another piece of silicone in here, which provides the button. And then of course that all clips in, and that sort of provides a seal around here, because of course there's a lot of material for it to push up against. And then in here we've just got a little tiny button, your little cheap crappy push button, and we've got interestingly 2 LEDs in parallel for each side, with an actual plastic spacer to prevent light from bleeding in from one side to the other. So that's nice. That's a nice touch. So I mean, there was design thought that went into this. I mean, it wasn't completely slapped together. At least, you know, somebody was thinking when they were doing this. And everything's done okay. I don't think there's anything that's stellar and amazing in this, but it's definitely passable. So yeah, I don't have anything wrong with it. The longevity of this is probably not going to be nearly as good as the original Nespresso unit, but even now the original unit goes for over $100, and this was $40. So it depends, I guess, on how much you use it and how long you expect it to last, for whether it's worth it to buy the Nespresso. And I know that this is not the only company, NutriChef, whoever this is, they're not the only company to make these. There's another company I saw online that does, they've also cloned it in their own way. I don't even think it's a metal case. I think it's plastic. So they've gone even cheaper, and I didn't want to go there. I wanted something that at least looked from the outside like it could potentially have some, you know, decency to it. So yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to kill you, although I don't know how long it's going to last. But anyway, hopefully that was interesting. Thanks for watching.